Actually, I think maybe your mic was on. That was funny. Hi, everybody. I am Scott. I am the host of this show tonight. It is going to be a really weird show and something that I've had this idea to do for a while. It's kind of been born of all these amazing shows that I've seen. But the one thing that I've always felt was a little bit, I don't know, missing was chat being able to really help and join in. So if you have a question that you want to actually come on camera or audio and ask, I will DM you or send to you, probably through the DM through Twitter, the Zoom link, and you can come in and we'll bring you on and you can chat with the DMs and we'll brainstorm some story ideas or some concepting or problems you're running into with character development or playing a character. It doesn't have to be only for DMs. This could be really cool for a character who's stuck trying to come up with a good idea. I can tell you the two players that are in my game that are DMs also that are going to come on, I get so much juicy content from them when I run. It's, for a DM, it's just delectable. It's like dinner time with info, so which I think most DMs would love to have that. So I'm not going to sit on the screen for very long. Just you can follow me at ZealZaddy everywhere. All right, let's bring everybody on because they're much cooler. So I have with me Tiffany, who is Dungeon Damsels, and she has a great show on YouTube and podcast. I'll let her tell you about it. You talk. Oh. Uh-oh. Try it now. Talk. I can hear you, but I can't tell if they can hear. Chat, anybody out? Can you hear now? Oh, no. Really? I am... Hold on. Let me adjust this. I feel... I hate when this happens. It's like the worst thing that could possibly happen is audio doesn't work for whatever reason. Inevitably, it's the worst. Oh, I can hear you very faintly.
Was that?
Now try it. Talk.
No, I switched to my other.
I'm hearing
mic.
good numbers. There you go.
I think we.
Okay, that's what it was.
Okay, well it's fine.
It's on now.
Stupid. I'd like to blame it on Streamlabs, on slobs. It's never slobs. It's always me. But it's easy to blame it. So go ahead. You can start again. Sorry.
Okay. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me.
Yep. They can hear you now.
Okay, that's good. All right. The technology on mine is like you can't be heard, but I guess you guys can hear me. Anyway, my name is Tiffany. I run Dungeon Damsels. We've been doing this campaign for 2 years. It's a female-centric cast. All of my players are female, except for one, and I can't say none of my husband. But he also plays a female, and if you're looking for something that is like really like character driven, that's where you want to be. We've got one character who is basically excommunicated from her religion, so she's going for that. Another one who can't meet familial relationships. We do a lot of deep dives into just difficult subjects. I have a PC just straight up die. Spoilers. I won't tell you who he is. I'm quite proud of it. 47 is coming. Episode 47 is coming, and it was like amazing. So yeah, that's my little spiel.
How long until 47 is released?
So we're gonna finish up 46 with this week, and then in the next 2 weeks I'll release the second part part of my underwater horror campaign. That's a little mini campaign that I did, and then it'll be 47. So I get okay. It's not that far. It's not that close. It's in a month. But I'm also going to release a Hanukkah special.
Yes. Did you find all your players, by the way? Did you get players?
Yet. I'm still trying to find another 2.
Okay. So why don't you, in chat, why don't you tell what you're looking for? Maybe they'll know people or they are the people.
Can I just tell them here?
Sure. Yeah, right here.
Okay,
yeah, that's what I mean. To chat.
Oh, okay. So I'm doing a mini campaign that's about Hanukkah, and it's basically going to be a reenactment of the Maccabees revolt against the Greeks. And I'm looking for a 5th player. I mean, I really want this person to be Jewish because, like, my main cast, none of them are Jewish. And then I have one Jewish player. I'm like, I feel like we need another one just to make this, like, actually Hanukkah. So if you know anyone, or if you are that person, let me know. It's going to be probably a lot of combat since we're ready to.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. So you're going to play, like, if you know the history, it's going to focus around Judas Maccabee and his brothers.
Awesome. I don't know the history. It sounds really cool. I love it when there's historical. We'll get into that. I have some questions that I might bring up whenever if there's some lulls. All right, Morgan, let's hear about you.
What's up, everybody? Morgan. I'm with Mind Flayed Mondays. I'm the founder. Mind Flayed Mondays is a group of dungeon masters who run professionally for clients. So if you're looking for somebody, myself and several other amazing people offer that service. I do want to say that I am working towards making it to where we actually each month will have where people can sign up for either a monthly thing or like a one shot. So instead of having to wait and get a group together, if you just want to join in, we're going to like have a schedule set up where people can just sign up to join in with a game. So that's what we're working towards. That's the next thing with that. I also have a podcast that I run that it's fairly new. We just released episode 11 yesterday, and it is a lot of fun. The world is called Voxus. It's a homebrew world. The continents themselves float above the planet itself, and the people live high in the sky. And it is following a group of amazing adventurers, or amazing cast of adventurers, and they are just a wonderful group to play with. So if you have a chance to check it out, please do. I think that besides our team here that we have some of the best players in my game. So just saying.
You have some awesome players. I know some of them, and I've listened to some of the episodes. I've listened to 4 of the episodes so far, so I haven't made it to 11 yet. I kind of listen to shows while I'm working. Sometimes I'll listen to Dungeon Damsels. The problem with that is I can never get caught up to where they actually are. I'm always like, if there's 20 episodes, I'm on 4. If there's 100 episodes, I'm on 7. Like, it takes me forever because there's so many shows that I try and keep up with. And, of course, I can't keep up with them, so I'm always behind. Luckily, there's very little, what do they call it, water cooler talk about streams except Critical Role. It's the only one.
Thanks.
So,
I was looking at chat. Somebody said they listened to episode 10 today, and they said episode 11, and it's getting so good. So thank you for that.
Oh, yay!
okay, nice.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it.
So the way this is going to work, I have some questions that I'll ask our DMs. We'll talk about it, but also if you have questions in chat, bring them up. More importantly, if you want to join us, let me know in Twitter. You can follow me at ZealZaddy, and I will send you a link to the Zoom, and you'll join us in the Zoom, and we'll talk together about whatever you're running into a problem with. This is really, I would like to say it's mostly story rather than system problems. Although even some of that stuff, you know, we're all DMs. We can solve some of those problems too. What I really want to do is I want to help people with better story, better plot, find ways to make their characters integrate into the world better, things like that. Because I think that those are some of the things that I find that in some games, particularly in new DMs, they struggle there. They spend so much time like practicing and learning the rules that they miss out on the thing that really makes their world deeper or more interesting is, the world. Even if it's not your own homebrew world, if you are struggling with Strahd, we have people here who run Strahd. They might know the ins and outs of how to solve some of that. We may not also, so that will be up to you. So the first thing that I'm going to bring up for our DMs, when you start building your world, where do you start? Let's start with Morgan on this.
Oh, man. Usually I start with trying to come up with an idea of a map of how I like the shape of it, because then I start to see the continents, and then when I see the continents, I start seeing who the civilizations are. I start out really big and go in small. And then once I get like just the general layout, like this is this civilization, this is this civilization, this is their connection, then what I usually will do is I'll decide, okay, where are my players going to start? Where do I want to start their adventure? And then I will pick there, and then I'll just build a few cities out from there, and I just kind of build it as my players play in the world. I play it fast and loose. I build as we go, because I want my players to feel like the world isn't completely built, that they're actually building it as they go, because the things they do matter, and I want them to feel that way. So as I kind of build as we go along, and certain things that they may do may affect what they come across, so in the world.
So one thing that I'll say about that, there's a game that I started with a DM the other day, and he's getting ready to run. He started with literally no world. He started with our characters, and even said specifically, there's no world yet. I will build the world around you as characters, which as a player, it made me a little bit like, oh, damn, there's nothing yet? Nothing. Which tells me, obviously, it's going to be very sandbox. We're going to have to make our own trouble. I mean, I'd like to call it adventure, but it's really trouble. He'll come up with things as we create ideas and concepts of what we want to do and what we want our characters to become or to be. All right, Tiffany, where do you start with your world building? Okay.
But what do you do if I say I want to make a new continent or country or new area? Basically, I think about where it is in the time stream of I compare it to our Earth time stream.
Right.
Where are they in terms of technology? Because that will determine a lot of things. Because it will determine how educated the people are and what sort of system they have in terms of government and education. So I decide where they are in terms of technology and how long they've been on the planet, because you can have a magically created continent and then people just started living there 100 years ago. But after that, after I figure out where they are on the timeline, I tend to try to figure out what type of people live there and what type of culture is going to be there. For example, with the Drow matriarchy, they were originally supposed to be Russian, but I had a player who made her wood elf Russian, and I was like, okay, I can work with this. So the Drow became this weird mix of Irish and Chinese.
Okay.
Yeah, so
that's kind of cool.
Irish name, and I have a bunch of Chinese music playing in the background, and I kind of did this weird montage of I looked into Chinese history and how the emperors ruled things, and then I kind of merged it with a little bit of
the Celtic stuff.
A little bit of Celtic stuff, more of kind of warrior-ish sort of thing, and aesthetics a little bit, and it's mostly their accent and their but so that was an interesting merge of things. They're basically Chinese communist Mao, and very extreme, and that's why one of our players defects from that, and she has to go through a culture shock of looking at that type of Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think about that, and then the type of government seems to fall into after like what sort of culture it is. I usually take two cultures and kind of merge them together. Like with dwarves, I took like Maori and dwarves, I guess like Scottish and like Northern Europe, like so. It's a very organic process. And then after I figure all that, I started like figuring out like trade routes and like what sort of like cultural things they might be into. What they like culturally is dependent on like what they're by. In terms of geography, like if they're in the mountains, you know, they're not gonna sunbathe unless they're, you know, they're gonna go to the beach and sunbathe. So
Yeah.
things
Cool.
like that. Back to the drow, like they exist in a dark place, so I had a lot of their recreational activities actually focused around sound, and like they're super into like aromatherapy and like smell. Sight
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, sight sometimes they feel to them, so they're really into like soap. You know, that kind of comes up
Who
a little
isn't?
bit.
Who isn't?
Who isn't into soap?
The drow essential oil trade is just going, you know,
You go to
bonkers.
Booming. It's booming.
Add that to there.
I wanted to hit back real quick. When you were sitting there saying about the game that you're about to be in, where he's building it around the characters, even with the world of Voxus that I started with, I had like certain things built, but as soon as the players picked their characters and their races and everything like that, I literally started changing things in the world based on their concepts, and it ended up being 10 times better than what I had originally thought up. So I definitely kind of do that with my players as well. Like I like to take their concepts and see how it would fit, and then if I need to adjust the world to them, I will. To a degree. I don't just bend and say, okay, oh, you want to be a guy with laser guns? Yeah, no, it's not like that. But if it makes sense and it goes with the general genre that we're running with, then yeah, I'll change the world up a little bit to fit that. Lightning Pirates.
Yeah, I agree. That's something I wish I had done sooner as a DM, because I was like trying to like really get with like this idea of like how the world is, and then after a while I was like, it's going to be extremely convenient. It's fine, and the players were fine with it. You know, they actually really liked it. So
it's scary as a DM.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time you decide, all right, I'm going to let them help create the world. They're going to do it inadvertently. I'm just going to take things they tell me and make it part of it, is kind of one of those aha moments as a DM. Younger DMs, they hit that and they're like, oh, because it changes the dynamic. It becomes a thing where it stops becoming you to them with information or world, and becomes you to them to you to them, and it becomes like this. It bounces back and forth.
yeah.
And if you're a DM that takes notes on things like this, it can inform your world very quickly with things that you improvise on screen. And if you do it well, they don't even know that what they said became canon inadvertently because it was just so cool.
Yeah.
You know, you have to kind of eat that up as a DM, and you know, it depends though. If you're running a one shot or running even if you're running a pre-built setting, kind of rebuilding that or taking that apart can make it an even better, more engaging setting, especially if the people have already played it. If you're running, you know, Storm King's Thunder, and you change it in ways that players who are used to it won't recognize it so easily, you can really change that dynamic too. Personally, I'm a map nerd, so I start with maps. I kind of love the idea of geopolitics. So I'm usually someone starting with politics and you know, the natural world, like the geography of what's going on. So I'll start with maps, and then I'll start kind of playing with what is there, and then I'll start building culture out of that. Like, why would this place be the way it is? Is it resource starved? So they need to go to other places to take resources, it might make them very aggressive. If they're resource rich, they may go inward and try and build up culture but become defensive. So that's what I kind of do. I kind of start with map and work my way up.
I honestly wanted to get with you on maps and have you help me make an even better map for the world of Oxus, but another time we'll talk. Because I could draw certain maps, but you do them way better than I do. I like your maps, so.
So we have our first question in chat, which is, how would you go about storyboarding? How much storyboarding is too much?
What does he mean by artsy, mean by storyboarding? Because I come from an artist background, and that.
Right. That's my question. Munkohi? I don't know how to pronounce it exactly.
Munko High. No.
Munko High, maybe. Munko High. Hi, Munko. Why don't you explain what you mean? Okay, like the path of the story to take. Oh, okay. So storyboarding out the path of the players is what I am assuming you mean. Please correct me if I'm wrong about that. I'll tell you, Munkohi. Okay, we were close. I think we were almost there. I don't map out the players very much. I do map out a little bit in the very beginning because I do believe in story arcs. And but most of the story arcs come from what the player writes about their character in their background and stuff. Then I start chewing through that and very quickly turn that into something that becomes longer and bigger. And then I build smaller story arc or character arcs, not story arcs, character arcs around that. Tiffany, you sound like you had something to say.
That's like a loaded question because I have very different approaches for story for like all of my players. Because, yeah, like I have one player where I work extremely closely with her on her character's arcs. Like she comes from she's a creative writing degree, so she like has like this slew of information on her character. She like built the town, and so I have to work with her very closely on what she wants. And what I do now is I used to try to like guess what she wanted based off the information she gave me, and that didn't work. So now I just say, I'm thinking about doing this, and then she'll tell me if she likes that or if I should change something, and it's this like exchange that we do. Whereas like I have other players who just are fine with anything I do, and I'm like, what do you want? Oh, you're fine. I'm like, it's extremely vague, but okay. And I have another player who needs guidance, like a lot, and because when I originally started my campaign, I didn't have like a huge plot line because I wanted the players to give me a plot line that they would generate kind of by themselves, like organically, and it didn't work very well because then it became too focused on like these two other characters because they're players who can just like take information given to them and then be proactive and do things to progress towards the goal, whereas there are other players who are more passive and they need to be like given information and be like, okay, here's the information and this is the path to go. So like after eventually with like my one player who needs a lot of guidance, I just said here is your grand plot, here's your quest. And she's like, great. That's what she wanted the whole time. She wanted me to give her this epic quest. So I said, okay, here you go. And so it's what I did after a while, after figuring all of this out, I have a skeleton of the to the very end of the campaign at this point. It's just a skeleton, meaning like big ideas. And then as they go, I will change that skeleton to what they need. Like, for example, originally, the item that they needed was not going to be in the place that they were going. But I decided to just conveniently put the things, their goals next to each other geographically. Because then otherwise the players would be like, oh, well, the thing we need is like 50 miles that way and 200 miles that way. and like, but her goal is that way. So I just started aligning their goals to be conveniently next to each other, even though like the narrator in me is kind of like, I don't like it. It's too convenient. But as players, they don't care.
Yeah, a lot of. Also, I mean, I'll add to that is often they don't notice. It's not that they don't even care. Some just don't even notice that there is an arc for them. They don't even know there's a story under them. You have to really make sure that they know they're building a story and it's collaborative, not, there's just places to go to beat things up.
And to be fair, even if you look at movies and books, when a group of people come together and they all have these different goals, their goals usually end up being near each other. It's almost as if fate has put them all on the same path together, which is why I think it's easy for players to just buy into it and be like, oh yeah, it makes sense that all of our stuff is in this general direction.
Right.
So I'm kind of like Tiffany in the fact that I generally will come up with, for the story arc, I'll say, okay, this is my idea for the villain. This is who I want it to be. And then I'll say, this is kind of how I want them to find out about the little crumb trail at the beginning. How do I want to bring my players together? And then everything else in between, I write as we go. So, so based on what choices they pick and where they look like they're heading next week, I will write things that I might put in their path for the next week. Again, I have like my end goal. I have my skeleton of my general ideas of what I want to drop in these different places.
Yeah.
But ultimately, all that can change depending on what direction my players take. I want it to be them driving the story, not me creating this whole giant story arc with everything that they're supposed to do. And then because when you write like that, I personally feel that when I play with DMs or I've seen DMs when they write super intricate, detailed stories of where things are going to go, they can't help but try to push their players in those directions. You can't help but almost railroad them down the path that you wrote. And I don't want to do that to my players. I'm not saying every DM does, but when you spend that much time writing it, you can't help but feel like, no, you want to go this way. You want to go this way.
Okay, so I'm going to flip that script on you. You have 4 hours before a session. You've prepared nothing, not even thought about it.
I do that all the time.
What do you do? What becomes your 4 hour prep?
I will grab a few monster ideas, like monsters that they might face, and I'll say.
So you start with the monster obstacles.
Yeah, in those situations, if it's something like that,
Okay.
not always. It just depends. If it's 4 hours, it might be a story like, okay, a gem was stolen and they're going to be hired to do it. Okay, so who stole the gem? And then I'll pick the monsters or the villains or whatever. I'll grab like 4 or 5 different locations. Like I'll find maps online real quick of 4 or 5 different locations and say, these are the locations that they might go to. And then I have a whole bunch of other maps on my Roll20 already that I can just pull up if if they don't go to any of those locations and they decide to run off in a different direction. I've had to, thanks to my family, many times create stuff on the fly. So I learned a long time ago, the more you put into it, the more you end up hurting when they don't do the things that you wrote. You're like, oh, I wrote all that and it didn't get used. So I just don't do it.
4 hours of prep and have nothing. Well, I could go about a couple of different ways. Like if I'm preparing for a downtime session, then I would basically take the NPCs that they like and have an attachment to, and basically just write out a premise of a conversation. Because my players love that. I just started doing that. Like you walk into the library and you see Saliana, and then she starts talking to you, and so I have a conversation with them through the NPCs. And I just do that throughout the NPCs, and that way, like, they're generating their own story and their own intrigue as their RPers. But if I need to create something that's like a dungeon or an encounter, if I'm desperate, I'll pull out Quest of Doom. It's a book by Necromancer game. It's kind of old, but they have a couple of different editions of it, and they basically have about like 10 to 12 one-shots in it. Another book similar to this is 100 random encounters. Game Master's 100 random encounters. And it just does like the skeleton work for you, and then I take that and I'm like, oh great, I can just tweak this to fit into my homebrew. I did that for one of the modules in the 100 random encounters. And that's the B Team, like the B Team Return mini series that I did.
I have 3 things that I do. One of them, and okay, I'll tell you, 2 sessions in the last year and a half of Elixia, I had to wing 2 sessions. One, you could feel, I could tell it was not, like, this is the risk of winging it. It was off, I could feel it. I think the players felt it, but one of them turned into one of the best sessions of the whole season. And there was so much that I wrote, like when I listened to it, I was like, oh my God, I got to write this shit down. So I listened to my own, I listen to my own sessions anyway, every week from the last week, just so that I make sure I don't miss anything. But I was writing it, like, that session created whole new arcs for like places I didn't think of until then. So there's a risk. There's a risk reward with that. Another one is I'll grab something like, one of the existing setting things, and I will just tear out a chunk from there and go, I'm going to drop this in the middle. I'm going to obfuscate it so nobody knows what it is. Change the names and places, but it's this stuff. And I'm going to use that tonight. And the other one is I'll occasionally fall back on something I've already run somewhere else. Like I can pull up a note from a previous game. I think Morgan, I had shown you some of my game notes. Those old game notes from previous games, I can pull them back in and go, okay, this could become a chunk for this, and I'll work from that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I was gonna say that's something I kind of do too sometimes. If I have short notice, like Moonky said, an hour or something like that, I might just grab a one shot that I've run before that's in their level range. Yeah. And say, okay, I'm going to take parts of it. Maybe not the whole thing, but parts of it. Just kind of rip out what I want, and that's enough usually to let me freestyle it from there. And that's like in a pinch. But if the more you do this, the easier it gets to wing it. Usually.
Oh yeah.
You gain more confidence as you beat up. Like a lot of the time, I didn't want to wing things because I lacked the confidence. But now, like, most of the sessions that I just, like, I'm like, I don't have a ton planned, so, yeah, and then it's, like, they turn out to, like, some of the best episodes we have.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you don't have content on the back burner or things you've already made, I go through a lot of Reddit, right?
Yeah.
People post gold there.
They do. They do. Reddit is really good, juicy stuff.
So, like, just copy stuff.
Okay, I'm going to go switch again. I'm going to go to characters instead of from a DM perspective. No, from a player's perspective. And this one I'm going to start with Tiffany because this one really is a better one for her. How much or too little backstory matters to you as a player, like for yourself, for your own characters.
For my own characters that I run, so I like doing deep dives into characters. I've kind of noticed that there are two people: the people who like to make a bajillion different types of ideas of characters, and yeah. I make like 3, and then I just really think about them. And so, for me as a player, how important is it? How important? I feel like, okay, I mean, it's really important to me to have a backstory that is at least compelling and interesting to me, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, but it's not. The more I play with other people, like, the less important it becomes to, like, fully explore my backstory. Like, for example, in one of the games that I run with my husband, Robo, sorry, he's the DM, I have my warlock, okay, and she has a very tragic background. Like, her parents were drug addicts. She was sold as an indentured servant. Her dad left them. She then was, like, put into, like, the most toxic, like, church society ever, where, like, the person that bought her was like, I want to take all the Azamars and then breed an army and take over the world. We're Azamar Nazis. And she was like, I don't want any of that. And so she leaves and she like sells her soul to get away from these crazy people. And then she has like her brother's missing. She has like a husband that she left behind. She has an ex-girlfriend that you know, and so she has so much going on. And we've been playing in this game for like about 3 years, and we've only like scratched like the surface a little bit, and I'm okay with that because like when you make your character, of course you're gonna be like, I care about my character. But the thing is that as a player, I've matured and have realized that not everyone super cares about my background, and we don't necessarily need to explore all of it.
Right.
And
yeah, but it informs you how you want to do things.
Yeah, it does inform you how you want to do things. I also want to stress that it's okay to have an idea of a character originally and then have that character change. Because that's what happened with my warlock. She was originally really like scummy, and like because she learned to survive by being manipulative and lying and stealing. Because she didn't have proper caretaking, but you know that doesn't make a good friend. And so I had her, like basically, also as like a person, I didn't like playing someone like that. I felt dirty, and I was like, I feel bad. I don't want this. So I looked at her as a character, and I thought, why would she change? Why would she go from this to that? And so we actually run into this child, and he's being sold for drugs, and she was like, I need that for this. And so she adopts this child. And from there, as a player, I'm like, this is it. This is her turning point. This is why she changes. And so from there, she decides she wants to be better for this kid. And then she learns how to be better through the other players. And it's been a very rewarding journey.
Yeah, it is.
That was really long-winded.
Morgan, what about you? What do you like or dislike about lots or too little writing?
I'm in the middle. I'm actually like, I feel like I'm a third. Like you said, there's two types. I'm third because I have a gazillion characters, but every time I come up with a character concept, I literally cannot stop making the character until I've written at least some type of who this person is to me, in case I ever get to play them. They have to have backstories. All my characters have to. I have like, I don't know. I have over 70 some odd characters on D&D Beyond, and every one of them has a backstory written out. Now, I don't write like super intricate backstories, just because I could, but I like to explore them more in the game. And there's nothing wrong with either one, because there have been times where I've written some really intricate backstories, but I feel personally, I can't keep up with gigantic backstories like that when they're because I forget shit. Like when we play with Vezran, I only wrote like 2 pages. I have to keep my thing that I sent you open sometimes just so I can look back to remember like who I said this person was to me. Like if I write too deep of a backstory, I'll be lost in my own backstory. So I like to write enough so my DM can torture me with it, but allow a lot more room for the DM to have freedom to create from it. So, but yeah, I'm like Tiffany. They have to have backstories. My characters are all special. They're a part of me. They're a part of me. They deserve to have some history.
They are. I'll go back and forth. Sometimes I'll do a lot of backstory. If I do a lot of backstory, the DM should know that I'm now very invested in that character. So don't be a dick. There's a lot of effort went into it for our collaborative game. But I've also found if I bring a deep character like that to a one-shot or a new DM, they don't know what to do with it anyway. So it's really kind of a waste. So in a case like that, I'll do something where I'll do almost bullet points of what his life is or was, so that it's easy for the DM to decide if there's anything worth pulling out and using. If not, I'll create my own backstory in the middle of the game in a conversation. I'll just make up stuff and then add it later. I mean, just like you said, a DM needs to improvise. Players, they can improvise their backstory. I know both of you have improvised parts of your backstory, and it became canon.
Yeah.
Who did your tattoo?
Yep. All right, Robo Sardi had a question. Okay. I find PC agency a careful thing to balance. If they're given too little, they feel like their choices don't matter or feel like they're being railroaded. Given too much agency, they'll have choice paralysis. How do you balance character agency to work with the story you have planned? Morgan, this is a good one for you to start on.
Well, usually I will look at who their characters are, what drives their characters, and as the player, what their characters are being driven by, and then the choices I give them, I try to build around who those concepts are, so that way they generally shouldn't have that paralysis of what do we do, because they already know that their character would probably pursue this. So if I'm going to create, like I said, when I build it off of them and the things that they're choosing to do. So like if they're telling me, hey, we want to go this way, next week I'm writing things like that, and I'm creating choices around that thing that they said they wanted to do. And I usually look at the characters and find ways to make it conflicting with who they are, and also things that seem like it would be the right choice for them based on who they are. I don't know if that really answers the question, but I kind of look at it like that. Like I look at who their characters are, and I try to keep the choices based around those concepts, so that way they're not feeling like there's all these things that they have to choose from. And I try not to give them too many times within a story of like, do I choose one life over 100 lives or 100 lives over one life? I don't, because doing that too much, it gets old real quick for players.
What about one life for the party's life? No, that happened in our game. That was a tough one.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that was rough.
That was a nasty one.
So I felt terrible about that.
Yeah, you were supposed to. You should. Murdering somebody should make you feel bad if you're a good person.
Murdering somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
Should make you feel terrible.
Watch the Myth campaign.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, everybody, you can follow us. You can see on our screen. I'm at ZealZaddy. Tiffany's at Dungeon_Damsels. And Morgan is at MindFlayedMun on Twitter. Everywhere else it's Mondays. It's like spelled out the way.
It's because Twitter wouldn't let me make it that long.
I know.
Twitter.
Player agency. So I'm going to answer this one a little bit. So there was something that Tiffany said earlier where she'll adjust to the player. Okay. I kind of feel the same way. I think some players, as they become more experienced, want more agency. Newer players, they're paralyzed by almost any agency initially, unless they're surrounded by players that are more experienced who will help guide them into understanding that the world is your oyster. You can do all kinds of things. Some players, though, they come in with the notion that Dungeons and Dragons is a combat game, and that freezes them when it's not combat. Like I think every player beginning to someone who's been playing for many years, all of them understand what to do in combat. Not necessarily how to do it well, but they understand, initiative, hit, damage, all that stuff. They get that. But you put a new player in front of an NPC that wants to converse and will work hard to not fight, it becomes a trickier thing. That new player, opening them up is half the battle of being a DM with new players, is getting them to not be frozen and find, the inner fortitude to kind of awaken in them. And then they're on their way to really enjoying every type of game, whether it's combat game, role-playing heavy game, plot game, puzzles game, whatever it is. All right, Tiffany, you.
What was the original question?
So how do you balance agency versus a character's agency so that they don't have choice paralysis, or they get railroaded, one or the other.
Okay. That is a difficult question.
And working it with your story plan.
I told you he'd bring you the difficult questions.
It does. Yeah,
We like that.
When it comes to like individual players, like I have, I feel like it. You can actually avoid this a lot by having like a really in-depth session 0. 'Cause then a lot of things are like they have a clear idea of like how the world is and what the relationship with the other PCs are. Because the choice paralysis comes from like usually they don't know what their PC wants, and
Yep.
in a lot of ways that's like not your problem. I'm like, but sometimes you have to help your players out. Like I have a player who does need help, and so what I do for her is, she'll just be like, I don't know what to do, and I'll give her like 3 options to pick from, and she's not super into RP, which is fine. But I have found that sometimes when people aren't as good at RP, they just need time to like think about what they want to say in that conversation. So, because I brought this player to this NPC to have this deep conversation, and I rolled for it. So like, I was like, well, okay, let's see what happens. And so she was intrigued by this notion and this deep conversation because it was a conversation about like, are you ready to bear the burden of knowing that this person can kill again? And so the player said to me, can we just go to the other players real quick so I can think about this? And I said, sure. And then I came back and I did their scene, I came back to her and she had a response. So sometimes they just need time.
Yeah,
they
they want to feel like a movie character. They have a good scriptwriter behind them.
Yeah.
They want to get the good line. They know they have one. It's not quite there. Give me a moment.
Yeah. Another thing is that there's this like, I don't know, this kind of idea that like DMs need to keep like the mystery. And the more I DM, the more I'm like, I feel like that's not like super important.
Yeah.
It's more important for your players to feel safe than for your players to be surprised. And
Yeah.
So another thing I can do is I'll say, this is like what, if I'm going to do something that's like really heavy, I will talk to the players involved and say, is this okay? And then they can say yes or no, and then they can prepare for that thing.
I will attest that she will do that. In Discord, it's happened several times with her character. Is this going to be okay? I'm going to hit the game up with this very deep thing. A-okay, guys?
Yeah.
Well, I'll say, we talked about this last week for my own game, because remember I said I had a situation with one of my players where I wanted to do something, but I didn't want to feel like I was taking control away from the player. And you did suggest that I talk to the player, don't keep it a surprise. And I have to agree with you, 100%. I talked to the player. He was completely down with what I was going for. But just doing that conversation on the side and him having a little bit of an idea of where this was going, even though it wasn't like going to be a surprise, he was much happier with that situation because it's about creating a great story for the character, for all the people at the table. So I definitely think that's good advice that Tiffany said right there.
And there's a middle ground there. If you use things like Monty Cook's consent tools, you have a pretty good base to understand what would be something that a particular character would have a problem with. And that means that you can still keep it a surprise for the characters that, they checked off everything's okay with this. But in this case, this one character has this concern with this particular topic. Then you can talk to that one character, say, this is what I'm thinking of doing. How do you feel about it? Would you be okay with it? Maybe sometimes it could just be that they need a heads up so they can kind of prepare themselves for whatever it's going to be. But they may also just say, I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to be involved in that. In which case, as a DM, you have a choice. To me, I would always say, well, then I won't do it. But there are other ways. I mean, a DM could say, well, maybe you shouldn't be there this night, and we'll do this. I mean, that's up to the DM. Honestly, I think the players are the most important thing anyway. So I will always defer to them if there's something that is coming up. But you don't have to necessarily talk to all the players about something that's coming up.
Yeah.
It can just be the ones that it will have a deleterious effect on. So that's going to bring up the next one, which is, do you like one-shots? Do you like running them or playing in them, or not like running or playing in them? Let Tiffany go first. Tiffany first, because Morgan went first on the last couple, I think.
I like them for specific purposes. Like, for example, if you want to introduce someone to Dungeons and Dragons, one shot is a good way to do it, because having them introduced to a campaign is like really interesting. And for example, like, if you want to see 2 new players and me handling them, that's the B team return. I took a one shot and I have 2 new players, and basically I have Michael, who is my co-assistant DM, where I have him just helping the new players learn things while I focus on DMing. So I feel like that's a good tool to introduce people to the game. It's also a good tool if you want to explore a specific type of thing. Like, I really wanted to explore horror, so I did a mini campaign, multi-shot, and it's also good if you want to explore a subclass or archetype of some kind. Like, it's good for exploring things, and it's not super great in my opinion for RP, because in a one-shot, it's so short. You have to just kind of wrap it. You have to unfold it and wrap it up, and it's just personally for me, it's not a lot of time to explore all the characters at the table. So,
Yeah.
But it's good for exploring things like, how does this subclass work mechanically, or how does this mechanic work mechanically?
All right, Morgan, what do you think?
I prefer story arcs and campaigns. And by story arcs, first off, to me, a one-shot, some people, when you hear one-shot, they think it means literally one session, and it can. But a one-shot to me is like one short adventure. And it may be something that takes 2 sessions, sometimes even 3, but it's just that one adventure.
Tiffany calls that a multi-shot, and I love that term, and I'm stealing it. Since I saw it the other day, I was like, oh, that's a good term.
But like Tiffany, I do find one-shots to be great tools. I also have clients who prefer, if they're paying for just one session, they want a story that's going to be done in 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
So, you learn to use them. But they are a really great way to explore concepts that you haven't really done before without having to worry about having a huge deal with that for a long-term kind of thing. They have their advantages. If you're just playing with a group of friends, I would probably say go with either a story arc or a campaign versus one-shots. But if you have oh, hey, our normal group isn't here tonight, let's just throw something together, one-shots are great for that, or new players, introducing them. It's kind of hard. They both have their advantages, and they both have their uses. But yeah, I'm definitely more of the story mode kind of person. I want to tell a story, and I want to dive into characters deeper. So I personally enjoy the longer stories versus just a single shot.
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with one-shots. I think it's, a lot of the, say, charity streams are done as one-shots, and I find them to be just super goofy. How many dragons can kill all of you, or can you kill before they kill you? That's what people do with them. So you're kind of playing a cartoon character. I would actually love to, when I do run a one-shot, I don't do them very often because I want there to be story. And I want there to be and normally, like Tiffany was saying, I'm exploring an idea or a concept that I'm not sure how to make work. the last one shot I did was a week or two ago, called The Gods of Creation. That was with some publishers. And I was like, these people know their shit. They're writers, and they publish content all the time. So I said, well, I got to do something that they've never seen. So what I did is I created a story where they began the game waking up from a natural disaster. And they played and they didn't realize it, but they were ghosts. They were dead. And they were in the ethereal plane, and they were seeing things that you would only see from the ethereal plane, and things that were in the material plane they saw as if it was in the ethereal plane, but they could see into it. Like there were phase spiders. Like I said, all right, what phases? Ghosts, obviously, phase spiders, things like that. So it allowed me to kind of play with this concept that also allowed them to see something that someone who's played many, many years had never seen. And all of them had never seen it. And what's funny is at the end of the game, they didn't realize it, but they were trying to get to this artifact that would reincarnate everybody for several miles around. Not resurrect, reincarnate. And I mean reincarnate in the old school AD&D 2 version, where some people became badgers and deer, and some people became other people from other cultures. And it was a really weird night, but all of them really were like, that was kind of amazing that you could do it, because it's hard to do. Because these people, they know their stuff, so you have to kind of play with perception. But I never see people run those. Like, that's what I would love to play in one-shots that had some story, had some idea, and something that's more, but it's so hard. Like, that one was really hard for me to put together, and I just don't think that many people put those together. What they do for one-shots are, I'll wing something, they'll fight some things, and it'll be over. You know, the puppet game was kind of like that. It was because I just didn't know how to do it yet, and I was like, I'm going to play with this idea, but it was more about the mechanical function of running the stream than the story at that point. There will be stories coming for other ones, but I just needed to understand, how do I make this work when I'm using a puppet? Can I use a stream deck? I didn't even know how I was going to make that work. So
I will say I'm kind of with you on the one shot stuff, because I ran a one shot a while back, like sometime last year on the stream, and I ended up putting it on my YouTube as well. But the characters, all the players, they were working together to recover this egg that was stolen by an evil dragon. But what they didn't know is all of them had ulterior motives. Out of the party of 4, 3 of them were evil characters. One was an evil wizard who was a dragon. It was an ancient red dragon trapped in an old frail wizard's body, and the other 2 were like assassins that killed the people that were supposed to come and took their places. So there was like one holy paladin who's literally trying to do good, and then 3 evil characters that are all trying to work together and don't even know that the other people are evil. And then when they finally beat the dragon and they're trying to get the egg, it turned into a combat between these 3 different groups. You know, the paladin, the wizard, and then these 2 assassins. And it was insane, because none of them were expecting for that to go the way it did. And I like doing that for one shots. You know, not necessarily like hoo hoo ha ha, but like catch you off guard.
Yeah.
You know, those are fun. So.
All right. So that was one shots. All right, here's the next one. And this is the opposite end of the spectrum. How much effort how much effort, with the amount of effort that it takes to run a campaign, how many campaigns can you run or play in at one time? Personally, like
run and play, or
run or play, like when you're, I mean, in an average week,
my limit
or
is
month.
3. Because that's
right.
what I'm at now.
But do you hit that all the time? Are you always doing 3? Or does that like get overwhelming and you pull back to 2? Or it feels comfortable?
I've been doing, well, I mean, I was doing 2 for the last 2 years, and I just added the 3rd one in here. I mean, I've been doing 2 since you started ZealZaddy.
Yeah.
I've been doing 2. on a regular. And then I just recently added the third one in there, and I'm doing fine with it. I think 3 is probably my limit and there's 3 different campaigns. I could probably still throw a one-shot in there every so often, which I have done.
Yeah.
But that's my limit, and that's the limit my wife will let me have. She'll break my kneecaps if I go beyond that.
So you have a built-in limiter.
Yes, I live with my limiter. That's my limit, though.
Tiff?
I'm in like 4 campaigns right now. I run one, and I've played 3 others.
Wow.
Yeah,
I don't know. Damn.
Yeah, I mean,
That's good.
and then I'm running my one-shot, or multi-shot, because I'm, this coming week I have my multi-shot. Not that you guys can watch it, I don't stream. That sounds intimidating. I'm scared. But for me, I'm getting more comfortable with the idea of running 2 campaigns, because I kind of want to be able to do that. Because I'm just better at DMing, and I know how much time I need to allocate to it. I also don't, I mean, I'm sure people work full time, so that's probably the main factor as to like why they can't DM more, because it's just the time they to put into it. And I don't work, so I have a lot of time to think about these things.
You have to make sure your singing is strong. You have to keep your singing up.
Yeah,
So you said something very interesting. You said you're better at DMing. Why do you think that? I mean, that's an interesting comment to say.
I think you're an amazing player.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm better at DMing because I basically like understand. One of the biggest like aha moments for me was that people have different play styles, and that's something we don't talk about a lot. Because like when I initially started playing D&D, I had a GM. His name, I'll just name him Bob, and Bob's DMing was fine initially, but then I started DMing and discovering like what I want from a game and having more of an opinion on that, where like I want to have heavy RP and have the PC's decisions impact the world, whereas Bob's campaign was, he was very much a railroader. Like, it didn't matter what we did, and like that became frustrating to me because, and I talked to him a number of occasions, like, this bothers me because I feel like my choices have no impact. And I mean, it didn't change.
Right. So that's a game you drop.
Yeah, that campaign ended. We didn't finish. But that was mainly because of schedule clashing. But like, it's because I understand the nuances of people interacting, because Dungeons and Dragons is really just a weird, like, social experience where you just learn a lot about reading people and what they want, understanding that they can't always articulate what they want or need, and how to navigate that.
Yeah, I think of it kind of like directing not a movie so much, but more like a great TV show with no budget. Except you have unlimited budget because it's all imaginary. But, you know, it really is like that, except your actors are all improv actors, not running off a script. I mean, honestly, I think there's an outline most of the time that is out there that you're working off. Even someone who doesn't railroad usually has an outline of some ideas, which isn't the same thing as railroading, but they prepare for branches, and that can give you enough tools if you can wing the meat of it. That can give you the bones that you can work off. So what about you? Do you think you're a better player or DM, Morgan?
Oof. I don't know. Tiffany, what do you think, honestly? You've seen me as a player and as a DM.
I think you're a great DM. Yeah, I hired him for
I know. That was super cool.
That was good. good. Like you like something that's a pet peeve of mine is when the players want to just like logic me, and I'm like, can we just not? And like he handled that like a dream. It was fine. And like we had 2 players who just wanted to logic him to death, and that's just kind of how they are. And as a player, I enjoy playing with you as written. I think you're very dedicated to who Frederick is and not deviating from that. But you're also like open to him evolving and becoming more than what he was initially.
Yeah. I feel like he's definitely evolved a lot because of you. Like the group, like you specifically, because you've really pushed him in a lot of ways. But I mean, hell, you challenged him and like made him shut down in his all high and mighty moment in season 1, and then he was like, "Oh, I gotta shut up now."
Thank you for the sub. Hold on. Thank you for the sub, Monkohi. Thank you for that. By the way, I want to make sure that gets acknowledged every time. So go on.
I don't know. Like I always feel like, you know what it is. It's like I think I'm a good player, and even though I'm a professional DM, I never think I'm good enough. If that makes sense.
Yeah, like, imposter syndrome is the DM's bane. You always have that. It never goes away.
I always leave my games thinking like, man, I did terrible. I could have done so much better. If I would have just done this, it would have been so much better for everybody. So I think in my head, I think I'm a better player. But I mean, I've been told that I'm really good and people love my games. So I guess I'm a good DM. So I hope I'm a good DM.
Well, that brings me to the next question. So what is your DMing style and what are your weaknesses and how do you address them or mask them?
Me?
Because we all have weaknesses as DMs, and we either fix it or we mask it. And I'm not sure you can fix all of them, so you're always at least masking some things. I
always struggle with travel and random encounters. I don't like to do random encounters, but sometimes it's nice. When I say random encounter, I just mean encounters on the road that aren't necessarily part of the main story.
Yeah.
And not necessarily me rolling dice on a random encounter table. Those always feel like either A, I rush it too quickly, or it's like this long travel that is so unnecessary. So I always feel like I struggle in there. Combat, I think I'm really good at. I think because I generally keep it feeling like it's really exciting. I recant what people do. Every so often I'll go back and recant it up to that point just to remind everybody what has happened. And that way it also lets the player who's up on deck know what they want to do a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
But I think I do really good with combat. That's definitely a strength. But weaknesses, I would say that and staying in my NPC characters. Because there's a lot of times where I have this general idea of how my character's going to...
You imagine all these voices right before, and then they all have the same damn voice all night.
Yes.
Fuck,
yes.
I missed it. God damn it.
Missed the opportunity to do that voice. Or there's, those are the things that I find to be my weakness. Right off the top of my head, I'm sure I got more than that. But I always struggle with the travels. Because I want the travel to be a time for my players to share information, talk, and grow as characters. But I don't want them to feel like they have to do that every time we're doing travel scenes. And I always feel like I'm never like got it quite right. I don't know. I always ask my players like, hey, the way I try to get better is I ask them like, is there anything you don't like? Is there anything you want to see me working on, like for you? I ask them individually, privately. So, what is it that you like about the game? Is there anything that you're like, it's okay, but it could be better? Like even if it's not hate.
Yeah,
let them know.
There's a term for that. It's stars and what's that called? Maybe somebody will channel it. I see it at the end of some games where they'll say, all right, it's time for stars and whatever the other one is. And what it is it's an opportunity for all the players to give the praise to the things they liked in the game, to players and DM, not just the DM. I mean, it's not meant to be that. It's supposed to be, if a player did something you really liked or you thought was awesome, give them that. and thank them for a great night, for a great evening. That helped make it an even better night. And the other one is to help identify places where the game lagged in some way. It felt awkward. It got boring. It was too nasty. I mean, I don't know, whatever it is. And the player, and it's not just DM to player and player to DM. It's everybody, round robin to everybody. And I was thinking of implementing it next season. And I've been, who does that really good is Gwen over at Arcanist Press. When she runs, she does that at the end of every session, and it's great. And I've been like, I need to find a way to incorporate that nicely. At the end of our nights, though, we're always just trying to close out the window and get it over. There's two things that I want to do at the end of the nights. I want to do that, and I want us to do a raid, and then we can hop off if we want. But I want to start raiding more places, getting sharing the love, I guess. What about you, Tiffany? What are your strengths as a DM and your weaknesses, and how do you address them or mask them?
So I'll start with my weaknesses. So I personally struggle with I struggle with combat because it's a lot of like mental strain. Like I was like driving like 8 combat NPCs, and I realized I just had like no ability to do any, like I just had no room in my mental processing to do much of anything else. So like I just tell my players that combat's hard to me because I can't really think of like a good way around that other than having like less NPCs to drive.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I just tell them like what like bear with me because this is just like a lot for me to process.
Yeah, that's interesting that you unburden it by letting the players know right out the front. This is a weakness of mine. You have to bear with me when we do it, but
and
it's cool.
I mean, I should probably do this more where I like am more familiar with the NPCs and their abilities, and then I can like what I've started to do is I actually like do the first couple rounds and I have their initiative already going and I pick what they're going to do, and sometimes that works and sometimes it goes so off the rails it doesn't even matter, but at least you had some sort of plan, and usually you can even like salvage something from the plan.
I was going to suggest that because that's kind of what I do when I don't do it with when it's just like 1 or 2 NPCs, but if I have like 8 or 9 monsters that I gotta like keep track of, I will generally like, okay, these are what these guys will most likely do.
Yeah.
And it does help. It does help, but
it really does.
I'll tell you, I think I'm good at combat, and there's so many times where I forget certain things that monsters do. So don't beat yourself up when you forget it, because I think every DM does that. There's so many times where you're like halfway through the combat. I know, Scott, you've done this too before. I know we've all done it. You're halfway through the combat and you realize like your big bad guy was like able to do something. You're like, shit.
Yeah, totally.
Like
although I'll say that if it's one of the big bads, I generally prep for them a lot more than I do the more mundane combats. The wolf encounters and whatever it is that you just dudes or people in a town are not.
Get attacked by dudes.
Those are like, I almost don't care if they're a good combat. I mean, I don't know if I wanted to necessarily. Thank you, Sean Burns, for hanging out with us. We'll be doing this more. One thing that I did read about from somebody trying to help prep people for one shots was to roll your 2-hit and your damage simultaneously to speed up combat. Rather than just rolling the die and then rolling more dice. It doesn't seem like a lot, but if you have a combat heavy night, doing it all simultaneously can really, when it seemed like from what I was reading that it could really speed up your combat, make it feel a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah. My thing is all the spells. Like I'm always having to look up spells because I can never remember exactly what they all do. There's just so damn many.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck. And as characters advance, of course, they get way more spells, and it becomes all right. So I always have D&D Beyond open and ready. I have 3 windows. I have 3 D&D Beyond windows open. I have a character window open, like for the campaign. I have spells, and I have, if there's a main monster, I have that one open. But the spells one is the one I'm always at. I'm like, oh, damn it, what's this one get again? Oh yeah, that. Okay.
Yeah.
Which save does it get?
I agree.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll have.
So annoying.
I know I have to come back to a spell. I'll just have it like in a chat.
Yeah, and there's the spells are so different in between, say, clerics and wizards that, I mean, there's some that cross over, but for the most part, there's a lot of individualization of them. Druids too, and they just get, and then as they get higher in advance in levels, it just explodes on you, and you have to be just ready. So that's the one that really eats me alive all the time. I'm always like, oh damn, what's that one do again? Oh, I forgot you had that. Occasionally, it's also, oh damn, you have that magic item. I forgot it that you had that. Those are another thing. All right, let's go to. Okay, go on. Sorry.
We didn't answer the whole question.
Oh, okay.
You're
right.
I want to talk to Morgan about like the traveling thing, because I also struggle with that, because like you don't want it to be this like, you don't want your world to feel small by having them travel a lot. So like by having them travel vast distances really quickly. So what you could do is just have a lush narrative to describe what scenes they've seen in a couple of weeks of travel, or you can just say you travel a few days and just have like a specific scene that you have written. Like maybe they find a squirrel and befriend it. It could be something
Squirrel.
tiny.
Squirrel.
Yeah. Or just something silly like they one thing I read about this came from Reddit, where someone says just put a bag in the middle of the road. Big bag.
Right.
The team will go nuts. What's in the bag? I'm gonna poke it with a stick.
As somebody who served in Iraq and drove off base and was looking for IDs on the side of the road, I can say that if there's a bag on the road, people will stop and take a long time to figure out what it is. So that's happened. So yeah, that makes sense. Believe it or not, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I will say what I did for some paid clients I have. They were trying to chase down an enemy, but they had to escort one of the players' nephew, who's a diplomat, to the capital. And while they're escorting him, there was a bunch of assassination attempts along the road. So I would have them travel several days, kind of like we said. You travel for like these many days, and everything is good. And then they'd come across the scene, and it seemed normal, and then it wasn't. And I did it like 3 times, to the point where like everything that they encountered on the road, they were like, oh no, is this another assassination attempt? And I started hitting them with things that weren't. Like there was like an old farmer, and they were so like scared of this old man.
Well, he had old man strength.
But it's just because the first thing that they met was this old woman who turned out to be one of the assassins, who was like in a disguise.
I mean, yeah, you're
So
setting expectations.
Yes. So they get hit with 2 other assassination attempts. So then there's this old man just walking down the road. They're like, I don't know if we should go near him. So they were like, they're setting up people in the trees, like watching as they approach him. Like I was like, this is good. But in general, I struggle. I always feel like I struggle. Maybe I don't, but it's one of those things where, again, as a DM, you're always going, what can I be better at? Like, I don't feel like I'm doing this good enough. I'm not good enough at this. And for me, definitely I feel like travel is something I need to be better at.
The thing you can ask yourself is, like, does this really add to the narrative? Because my team's been trying to get to this place for a long time, and I'm like, they could just be there now. I don't think dragging it out is going to add anything. We've reached like a narrative point where it makes sense that next session we're just like, you finish the rest of the travel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like my general guiding point. Like, how will the players feel at the next? And the other thing we didn't cover is what we felt like we were good at.
Okay, go.
Okay. Well, Scott, let's start with you. I feel like it's talking too much.
Oh, okay. I think I'm good at the narrative side. Like, that's my strength. I like to write, and I like to concept the big ideas, and I'm pretty good at. I think I'm pretty good at the very slow reveal, which is very hard to do in a campaign, mostly because as a DM, you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to tell them. I can't wait for it to be exposed. But it's like a Christmas present. You got to wait till Christmas. But occasionally you have kids that break into the closet and open the presents and then reseal them so that you don't know. I'm not saying that I ever did that. I have no idea how that happened. Don't know how that paper got cut on the corners. But I think that's a place that I'm pretty good. I have some pretty good tools in my arsenal, I think, for connecting plot lines. Like, sometimes I'll create a plot that is kind of off center from the rest of the arc, and I'm pretty good at finding a way to reconnecting it back in. Especially if the characters create a part of the plot that I hadn't planned on. I'm pretty good at finding a way to bring that back into the main plot or the arc of the story, or adjusting the whole arc of the story because of what the players do. Because one thing I don't do is I created a big arc, but my arc will adjust based on characters. I mean, even my biggest, longest arcs will change because of that. But the other thing that I think that I do is I will come up with unique, weird things to make the game different than other games. Like this game, I played a lot with dreams and visions, which, in Elixir, there's a lot of that. There have been whole sessions that were almost entirely dreams and visions rather than in real world stuff for the characters. And I think that that's something that is, I think a lot of DMs struggle with because they don't think about it as Dungeons and Dragons. They don't find the use for it. But like, I love, say, the dream spell. I think there's something really interesting about the spell and the power of it for a villain. Which, I mean, you guys came across that in season 1. The whole thing was built around those coins that he was giving out to pay the artists so they could enter their dreams and control them. I think I'm good at coming up with NPCs, and I'm terrible at remembering to use their voices. I almost never do. I always forget until I'm 15 minutes into their entire conversation, and then they're almost done. I'm like, oh, damn it, I forgot. And that just comes with, I think I have an underconfidence in my ability to voice, so I don't do it enough, and so I don't practice it enough, and then I just forget. I think Morgan was saying he has the same thing. So what about you, Tiffany and Morgan? What do you think are the things you're good at, that you're best at?
Well, I said earlier, combat is one of my things I'm good at. I think the other one is improving. There's so many because I run most of my games in a sense where I'm expecting to improv. I've gotten pretty good at just coming up with things on the fly, especially when my players hit me with logic, as Tiffany pointed out earlier. They hit me with certain logical pieces, and instead of going, I'm just like, yeah, sure, do it. And then this is what happens. Yeah, see, yep. And I just kind of in a way to where it makes sense, redirect them back towards what the story is really going on. The example is in the one shot I ran for them. There was this story of this guy who had sold some bad potions to an orphanage, and a lot of kids got sick from it. So then, and there was no character written about this, about the person who took the stuff there. But the players are like, well, how do we know it's this guy at the store and not like the person that delivered the packages? So then they wanted to know who that guy was. So I literally made him up on the fly, his entire family, wife and kids on the fly.
Right.
And they went there, questioned him, and found out that he was innocent. So, but I didn't have to think about it. I was just like, sure, there's a guy. He's a merchant who travels from town to town, and he's here right now. So go ahead, go meet him. Like, I'm good at doing stuff like that to just keep the story flowing, moving. But yeah, those I would say improving and combat are my areas where I feel strongest at.
All right, what about you, Tiffany? This was your question. Your counter to my question.
I have been told by my players that they really enjoy the like dream sequences. Like for one of our players, she's doing a class change, so I have her do these dream sequences so she can learn her new class. And initially as a DM, I'm like, I don't know if the other players are going to like it because it's just going to be her doing stuff in her dream and no one else is going to be doing anything. But the answer was, no, it's great. We love it. I'm like, oh, okay. So my dream sequences
cool.
are pretty good.
Nice.
I think I do a good job at building NPCs that people can like relate to.
Yeah.
That's like a
believable,
that are
relatable,
and that the PCs care about and want to help. That was like my main goal as a DM when I started was I want to create stories that evoke emotion and characters that we relate to. And I feel like that's like 2 years later, I'm like, oh, I can actually do this now.
Those moments are beautiful when they happen.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God. You should get an Emmy. Like that's what you're like thinking for your characters. Like, damn, are there Emmys in role playing? Or the equivalent. Yeah. I like doing lore too. Sometimes I'm good at it. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I get it right. But if I get it wrong, I'll fix it later.
Yeah. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
All right.
Well, I think that's one of the things that most teams are most afraid of is messing up. You know, I mean, we all are.
Yeah.
But the thing is it's okay to make mistakes while you're running. If you forget something or you get your lore mixed up, it's okay. You can always go back and retcon it and say, hey, guys, I screwed up. Your players, if they're generally good people and they're your friends, they'll be understanding. They're not going to like, oh, well, you said this and you can't change it. They're going to be like, oh, dude, I get it. We're all human. It's okay to mess up whether you're at a table or in real life. It's okay to make a mistake every once in a while. Just, you know.
Yeah, and it's okay to not have everything planned out. Because
absolutely.
My players really wanted to learn about the Fae. And, like, me as a DM, I hadn't planned that much because I was like, they're not going to get to that arc for a long time.
Right.
And eventually I just said to them, look, me as a DM, I don't have anything right now, but I'll give you stuff later. How's that?
Right.
And they, instead of like, oh, you didn't actually find anything in the library with your roll of 23, they're going to be upset with that because they feel cheated out of information. But I was just like, look, I don't have the information like you.
See, I will say this about skill checks. Sometimes, even if you get a natural 20 and you max out your thing, there's just not information there in my games. I will say that.
Yeah, me too.
But what I'll tell them is, hey, you look around in here, and you are 100% sure there is nothing in this library about that particular thing. I mean, I get it though, and I'm like you. You want to reward great rolls, but sometimes it's okay not to. I feel like because sometimes that also lets them know quite a bit because otherwise they might think, oh man, maybe if I come back and try again, and they'll just keep trying to look because their rolls weren't great. But when they roll really good and you tell them there's nothing here, they know there's nothing here.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go on. Sorry. So go ahead.
I was just saying, like, I think that's just as important as rewarding them with tidbits sometimes is letting them know there is nothing there. And it's great.
So I think we have time for one more question. So this is one, as a DM, what do you want to see? Not what you expect of them, but what do you want to see your players do game one, session one, campaign, beginning of your campaign? What do you want to see out of players that you've never played with? Like, what is the thing that you're looking for that will make you go, yeah, they're going to do well, or I already see a problem here?
For me, I want to see several things. One, they're having fun, that they're gelling with everybody else at the table, that they're being proactive with the story. If I have to sit there and push them towards things every single time, it makes it hard for a DM to sit there and tell this amazing story for everybody to enjoy if you have to constantly poke and prod somebody to be a part of the story. So for me, that's my big thing. Having fun. If I see that they're smiling and having fun, they're engaged with not just me, but everybody else at the table, and they're actively asking questions and being involved, that's what I want to see.
What if they're quiet, but they seem to be having fun?
Then I mean, well, if they're quiet, that's understandable. You got to look at people and realize some people are not. They don't want to be. I've played with players who don't want to be the main characters. They're very happy with just being like the supporting character, and being part of the group, but not sitting there talking and being in the front all the time. And sometimes they just need time to get used to that. I'm okay with that, but if I can see that they understand what's going on with the game, and they're still being actively involved with everything. If I call them, they're not looking like, what am I doing? What's going on? I know that they're engaged. I need to know they're engaged, whether they're talking or not. There needs to be that clear sign that they're paying attention and they want to be involved.
Yeah. Tiffany?
A lot of the same. Like, I really enjoy players who want to be involved with the other. Like, they want their character to know the other player and to form connections with all of the other players, because it just makes everything so much easier for the DM when you're not, like, a navel gazer and just kind of self-involved, because then, like, you don't care about the other arcs of the other characters in an interactive story game, and it's kind of annoying.
Yeah, it's not a computer game.
Yeah, like, I'm like, it's not about you, though. So that's something that's really big for me, where I really just want players who want to be a part of the group story and developing the group story and creating connections with the group. And players who can communicate to me what they like and what they don't like. That's like lower in my tier. That's just really nice, because, like, then I can say, well, what do you want? And they can say, I want this thing, instead of me being like, well, do you want this? And they're like, I like players who kind of, they know what they want to explore. They know what they want to do.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, they're like, I don't know what I want to do, and I don't know how I should react. Like, just informed players who want to, it goes back to being engaged. Like, they want to be engaged. If you're engaged in the game, then, like, those questions are going to be answered, because you're involved in the game, and you're involved. You'll make more choices, and then you'll make more informed choices. Basically, you're emotionally involved. That just makes things better.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. The only thing that bothers me is if they're really, if they throw themselves into combat recklessly right off the bat. That's kind of a red flag for me, like, for no reason. Just, that's like why? Or they, I mean, I don't even want to say going down the road of a murder hobo, but even players that sort of have a disregard for the NPCs, if I feel like they don't really care about the NPCs enough to respect that they have their own point of view and perspective and are there for a reason, or maybe not there for a reason, but are not there to be just, like, push aside for no reason. I think that's kind of a red flag. But mostly, if they're engaging with the story, like you were saying, and they're finding, I love when a character starts digging into something informationally or emotionally that, even on session one, that I'm not ready for. Like, they come up with something really unique, but good. Like, there could be meat on that bone if you go down it. I also think that it's important that they feel, like you were saying, that they bond with their party. If they're not bonding with the party, it is going to be hell until something changes. You have a conversation, or just, move them out of the game and get someone else.
Yeah, it's just a big uphill battle. difference in there.
I do want to point out there is a difference between having character drama and party, like actual player drama. Like I don't, and even then I draw a line, because if players are constantly fighting in character, it drags the story and takes away from the main thing. Which me and Brandon have been guilty of doing that sometimes in the past. We debate too much about views, but that's just because our characters. But that's why you guys kind of pull us back, and when you do, we always backed off. But we get along in person, which is what makes it okay. We don't take anything that our characters say serious. But when you see players, not their characters, having problems with each other, or they're taking what that person's character is saying or doing personally in real life, then there's a problem. That's where I see the problem. You know, separate character from who you are if you're going to sit down at the table, guys.
Yeah, I definitely need that maturity at the table. And sometimes, I think it's okay to just say, I need to just step away for a few minutes and just walk it off and come back.
Yeah.
Sometimes just think of, if you have problems, think of ways to combat them.
Yep.
That's how you grow.
All right. Well, I think we've reached the end. We went an hour and 45 minutes with a few questions from chat, or the list of questions that I had. It was a lot of fun. I think this is kind of a cool thing. Like I learned things about both of you I didn't know, which I think is cool. It's always good to find things out. I can totally use it in game. Not in a bad way.
No.
Thank you, everybody that joined us in chat. It looked like there was kind of an active chat for a while there. It was nice. I don't know when we're going to do this again. We'll probably do it next Tuesday if you two are up for it. But then the following week after that, after we get through Thanksgiving next week, then the Elixir campaign will take precedence on Tuesday, but maybe we'll find another night. Maybe we can do, it doesn't take that long. It's an easy stream to set up and run. I mean, it's just a big Zoom windows. I'm like, Technically, it's the easiest stream I've ever set up. Thank goodness. Some of them get just ridiculous with all the windows, and there's so much more I want to do with all of these. This one doesn't need all that, which I'm happy about. Thank you guys for coming on and doing this with me. I think, this is kind of, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm kind of experimenting with other things to do on stream because I do want to do more stuff. And I think this is something that can be turned into something really cool and fun where we, get other people, once chat gets rolling with more questions, I think this would be really cool to do. Yeah. And I have a pre-session 0 tonight. Oh, we have a pre-session 0 tonight in about 15 minutes. So we'll say bye to everybody. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Adios, amigos.
Wait, should we raid somebody?
Yeah, we can.
Hell yeah.
I just want to say two things. Remember, don't be a murder hobo. And whether at the table or in life, never stop rolling.
Yep. Let me see if it will let me raid.
Raid.
Where's that raid button at? I always forget where it's at.
When you find it, let me know, because I need to know where that is if I ever start doing streams.
Yeah.
Huh. I can't do it at the moment. I'm not sure why. Maybe there's not enough people in chat. Maybe you need more people in chat. I don't know.
Let's not worry about it.
All right.
Then.
Yep. Not worrying about it tonight. All right. Good night, everybody.
Well,
talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.